I am making a multi-strand bracelet here for fall, and I'm just using some kind of amber and copper colors. Each strand is different, and I've got them all fed onto my bead stringing wire. I've got some 11/aught seed beads here, right here on the end. I'm going to pull this wire through my bead cap here, and then that's going to hide some of these seed beads, but then some of them will show. You don't have to put crimp covers over the tops of your crimps on each line because those crimps will be hidden by the bead cap. So on this particular project, I am using my friends the Bead Buddies. They just kind of have a little spring here. When you push the little tabs, it opens up and it will grab hold of your wire. That way you don't have to worry about all of this beadwork falling off if you happen to move. I think they come 6 to a pack for, I want to say $9, but I'm going to make a small loop because this is going to be going inside my bead cap here, so I don't want to make anything that's ultra huge because then it wouldn't fit in there. I'm going to take the tip of my pliers here, my round nose pliers, and I'm going to go down about an inch to maybe a little bit over an inch, and whatever space that you choose on your round nose pliers is how big that your loop is going to be. I want it to be a petite loop, so I'm going to kind of be about 1/4 of an inch on the end of my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to push with my finger until I get a 90-degree bend. I'll stay in the same area when I reposition, and then I'm just going to pull with my index and thumb finger until I get it over the top of that plier, and I made sort of like a little question mark. Then I'm going to reposition that to where that's on the bottom plier. I'm going to change how I'm holding it. So I'm right-handed. I just changed it over to my left hand because this tail of wire here, now I want to pull it towards myself like that. This particular one, since this is going inside of our bead cap, we don't really need it to be very long. So I'm just going to do maybe 2 wraps, and I'm going to do mine with my finger. I'm going to take my flush cutters. I'm going to come right up against where I want my wire to end and kind of keep my finger on that little tail of wire so it doesn't go flying up and hit me in the head. So once I've trimmed that off, it's flush up against that stem. I'm going to take one of these little crimp tubes here. It's kind of a little cylinder. This is a size 2, which is standard. I am going to crimp the other sides of all of these and then do the same thing that I did on this side here with the new piece of wire and bead cap that I had. I've got 2 of the 3 strands crimped onto my bead stringing wire, onto the loop that I made that's going to be pulled through my bead cap. I've got 1 more strand. Grab one of my crimp tubes. I'm going to feed that onto my wire. So now I've grabbed hold of that loop. I'm going to feed the wire back through my crimp tube here. And then because these beads are so small here on the end, they're a size 11/0 seed bead. I'm using a 0.18 millimeter, or I'm sorry, the millimeters are 0.46. It is a 0.18 inch diameter on my bead stringing wire, and I really am struggling to get the wire through these little 11/aughts. So if you're going to use the 11/aughts like you really need to, 0.15 inch is better on your, I'm using a 7-strand wire as well. I'm going to have to get my bent nose pliers here to help me. Again, you want to be careful that you don't strip the wire while you're trying to push this. But sometimes just having the extra leverage allows you to get that end through, and then you can pull like that. Okay, so I've got this tail right here. I've got all my little seed beads on, and now I'm just kind of pulling this down towards the bigger beads. I have the last 3 like actual design beads, and then I've got a big loop here. So I need to take up the slack. I'm pulling with my bent nose pliers here on the end, and I'm pushing the other bead, the small little beads plus that loose crimp tube. I'm pushing all of that back down and only have about 1/4 of an inch of loop right here. So there's my crimp bead. To crimp, you will go into this back channel that looks like a U shape right here. You're going to rest that crimp tube right in that back channel that looks like a U, and you're going to give it a nice firm squeeze, and you want to reposition your crimp pliers over the top of that U. This front channel right here where my fingernail's going over it, it kind of looks like an oval right there. That oval is going to go on either side of the crimp, and you're just going to give it a squeeze, and when you do that, it kind of closes up the sandwich, so to speak. So now I'm all lined up. Right there's my crimp. I squeezed it with my bent nose pliers just to be sure I was lined up. And when you're crimping, you also, after you've got it crimped, you kind of want to lightly run over it with your fingers just to kind of pull. You're not pulling really hard, but I just brush it with my thumb to be sure I don't have any movement. And if I don't, then I know I'm good to go and I can cut my tail. My wire is coming out of this little metal flower bead. So I want to cut the wire right up against that so that it's as flush as possible. So see how nicely these pliers get into that little tiny hole? You can't use your regular cutters for that because they're too wide. I'm going to pull this through now, my bead cap. And if you use bead cones, that's fine. Pulling that snugly through. At this point, if you wanted to put your bead on so that when you wear the piece, it's got a little bit more security, but I don't want to have all of that length because that'll get me into about an 8-inch bracelet, and I wanted a 7.5. So I'm going to come through here and make a wrapped loop right up against this belt. I want to be sure all of my beads, though, or my strands, are pulled as tightly as I can get them. I'm going to set right on top here of my bead cap. I want a small wrap. I'm going to push with my thumb to create a 90-degree bend. I'm going to reposition my plier to where I am vertical now, and then I'm going to pull with my finger to where I get that question mark over the top of my plier. Then I'm going to put the bottom of my plier into that question mark, and then I'm going to reposition my hand so that I can pull tail of the wire. You're going to have to bypass the lower jaw of your plier so you kind of pull it back up straight again as you come around. And then as you wrap, you want to be right close to the previous wire so that you don't have big gaps. Now I'm getting down towards the end where I'm touching my bead cap, so I'm going to get a little help with my bent nose pliers just to be sure I've got a nice tight wrap. I'm touching my bead cap now. There's just a little tiny gap right there. I want to cut it off with my flush cutters, and then I'm going to tuck it in with my bent nose pliers. So I'm going to come in the flat part of my pliers facing my wire that I want to cut, and then just give it a squeeze. I've got both of my loops completed. So this is a lobster clasp. It's the one that actually looks like a little claw. So I want to be sure before I put this on here that it opens and closes easily. I also got a little 4mm jump ring so that I can attach that lobster clasp on there easily. And then I like to use split rings for more security versus the jump ring. The difference in the split ring is that this is a double looped ring, just like a keychain, except this is a miniature version of a keychain. The jump ring is just like this little tiny one here. See, it's just one piece of wire, and it has a slit right there in the center. I just don't like to have that as part of what my clasp grabs a hold of because I like it to be more secure. This is my flat nose plier here. It's nice and flat. This is my bent nose pliers. It looks like a crooked finger. Just holding the jump ring is going to be happening with my left hand, which will be my flat nose plier, and the movement will be in my right hand, so that I can open up the jump ring. You want to either push it away from yourself or pull it toward yourself. So you're either opening or closing the door. Okay, so now I'm open there on the jump ring. Grab a hold of the loop on your lobster clasp, and then I'm going to grab a hold of my wired wrap loop. I'm going to just close that back up, so grab a hold of the left side with your stationary plier, do the movement with your right hand, if you're right-handed, and I'm just going to close the door. So now I'm pulling it back towards myself, and I'm giving it a little squeeze with my flat nose pliers to be sure that I'm back in line and that there's no gap in order for my clasp to come loose. This is where you can either use another jump ring on the other side, or what I like to use is the split rings. You have a handy dandy tool that has a little hook on the end here. You can slide that in to your split ring to open it up. Just like you would a key ring, try to get this crazy loop fed onto your split ring. Once I've got a hold of that, then I take my bent nose pliers and I grab a hold of it and I just feed that on until that ring is completely onto my wired loop. Now I can clasp my bracelet, just grabbing a hold of that split ring. Okay, so here is my bracelet, and there's the back of it. Have a sparkle-riffic fall, y'all!